Tom, your firm, and I assume you worked on this project, but the University of Arkansas project, and
Yes.
if not the largest, one of the largest CLT buildings in the nation.
Hmm.
So you're well versed in this construction material. I wanted to get your sense as a firm of what you guys are. I mean, where are you looking to take the mass
Hmm.
timber, construction
Yeah.
material and design approach here as you
Hmm.
work on more of these projects, whether they're small scale or large scale.
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate to have entered this mass timber world working on pretty large, significant buildings. So our design building at UMass Amherst was our first mass timber building, and it got a lot of recognition given it was a very significant academic building. It had this very cool sculptural zipper truss that shaped the main space. And then on the heels of that, we worked on Adohi Hall at University of Arkansas, which was taking mass timber in a new typology where design building was a traditional classroom building, academic building, and Adohi Hall was now a student housing typology. So proving that mass timber is versatile, that it can be used for any type of buildings in terms of its program type, that I think was really important with Adohi Hall. And also proving like a real efficiency because Adohi Hall was a really big building with over 700 beds, and so 200,000 square feet. It was at the point of completion the largest cross-laminated timber structure in the United States. It might still be. I think in the next 6 months or so, probably a building in the Pacific Northwest will surpass it. But for now, it may still well be. But beyond that, it was really just again just proving the concept of a large housing structure that could take advantage of the modular efficiency of mass timber. I think that was what was really kind of pioneering about that project. And then now, as we continue to work on more projects, we're really expanding across scales and types of buildings. So other projects that we've got on boards are we're doing a museum for the National Museum of Forest Service History in Montana. And so that's kind of looking at a cultural typology of a building, again, using mass timber. We're doing a tiny environmental education center for a preschool in Auburn, Alabama, which is like barely 3,000 square feet, and that's really looking at kind of like um, the kind of a microscopic level, if you will, in terms of looking at a procuring all of the source of wood on the building site because it's being built in a nature preserve. So the trees that we will have to remove to make the building site are actually going to be the source of wood that's going to be made for the 2-bys and the cross-laminated timber that will be produced locally in Alabama and brought back to the site so that we're using wood for essentially all of the structure. There's no concrete foundations. We have wood piles, wood structure, cross-laminated timber walls and roofs, and all of that is being done kind of sourced from the site, made into lumber and CLT and brought back to the site. So that's really exciting. Kind of is proving this kind of proof of concept of being able to build locally, right? Take the local materials and to be very super sustainable in kind of reducing the carbon footprint and the embodied carbon of a project. And then the third project that we're working on is more urban, and this one probably has the most, I would say, relevance in terms of the kind of the urban typology of buildings. We're doing a mixed-use building for a urban development just outside of Boston, which is going to be the centerpiece of a new live-work community with housing and offices. So it's really proving that mass timber can be used as our cities grow by developers for these new critical pieces of building in our new urban cities. So we're really excited about kind of both the scale and the wider ranging application of mass timber across program types.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to track the maturation of this particular part of the market. And the last big report we put out a few years ago, the biggest sort of strain on growth of mass timber was the supply side, just not enough CLT, NLT, DLT suppliers out
Yeah.
there. How does the supply chain look right now, Tom? Are there more sort of plans popping up? And obviously
Yeah.
we know about lumber prices right now
Yeah.
and shortages
Right.
and whatnot.
That's that,
How does it
that's
look on the supply side when you go to source
yeah.
CLT for a project? Are you finding it difficult?
No, well, we certainly have a lot more options or suppliers to choose from than we did when we designed our first cross-laminated timber building at the UMass Amherst. Uh, at that point, we were looking at just one U.S. supplier. That was back in 2015 when it was being bid. And now you've got at least a half dozen, more than, I think you've got around 8, 10 U.S. suppliers alone now. So it's really just blossomed. And it's and still, while kind of the majority of them are in the Pacific Northwest, given the kind of the governmental subsidy there and the excitement in that part, you are seeing it in other parts of the country. I think we have one in the Southeast, another one coming up in Arkansas related to the Walmart project, where Structureland has agreed to build a factory in Arkansas. So that's in addition to the Smartland factory that's in Alabama, Dothan, Alabama. So that's 2 in the South region. And there's many discussions to bring one here in Northeast as well. So I suspect that within the next 3-5 years, that number is going to double as well in terms of the amount of cross-laminated timber as well as other mass timber suppliers that are in the United States. Of course, so far you've got a lot more choices in Canada and Europe for the suppliers. So we're finding it exactly kind of the way we like it, in the sense that more suppliers there are, the more competition there is, prices starts to go down, all of that, which is great as the industry starts to mature. I mean, it's still in its very early stages, compared to where you could get steel and concrete from so many suppliers. You don't have to worry about that. You still have to worry about it in mass timber to make sure that when you're looking for procurement, that it's apples to apples at what you're comparing. I think that's the biggest issue right now, is every supplier does things slightly different, even though everybody has to meet the PRG 320 specifications of cross-laminated timber. Their lamination types, the connections that they would like to use, the species of wood that they use are all very different. So it makes for slightly different products depending on which supplier you go with, and that's been a little bit tricky. But I think again, all of that will start to coalesce and become unified as I think the industry matures. You spoke a little bit about the lumber price. I think that's been the biggest issue with the board feet of lumber price tripling, right, over the past year. We suspect, and I think wood is not alone there. All commodities and materials have gone up. Steel's gone up, and concrete has gone up too. But timber, because of its volatility, has gone up more. And so we're looking at it, and I think it will go down, but not to the level that it was before. This is what I'm hearing from all the insiders. And it's just, I think, a natural process of kind of this effects of the pandemic that have shut down the industries for a while. And so now there's less supply and the demand is picking up. So it'll take time for all of that to kind of equalize.
I don't know, anything new to sort of point out that you guys are looking forward to exploring in the next year or two?
Well, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot more flexibility with mass timber and other materials these days. And I think specifically in areas where mass timber isn't the norm and still a very new, so outside of let's say the Pacific Northwest, most buildings are either steel or concrete still, right? So you still have to deal with issues of contractor know-how, people who know how to build it, all the risks and things that contractors and developers are keen on, because naturally risk is something that they don't want to maximize. So they want to minimize risk, whereas I think architects are by inherently more risk takers, right? Because we can envision design and using new materials and new forms. And so what we're seeing now actually quite a bit is kind of a hybrid approach, where things like cross-laminated timber is a significant component of a building structure, but it's not the only component. And so we're seeing a lot of structures where you've got a steel frame, but you're actually replacing the composite steel deck with concrete with CLT panels, because that's the easiest and most cost-effective way to integrate mass timber without changing everything else, right? So we're seeing a lot more applications there where right now, in terms of cost and minimizing risk, that would be like the easiest way that mass timber can be introduced into a building system. So many examples that we're seeing throughout the country. And that's great, because I think doing a mass timber doesn't have to be all in. It doesn't have to be like 100% or 0%, right? I think there's a huge range there. At the same time, we're kind of pushing the boundaries of the code as well. You know, the design building, although that's kind of that was built and finished in 2017. It was remarkable in terms of the inventiveness of that, because we actually use cross-laminated timber for the shear walls for the elevator cores and steel and the stair cores, so that it also took the lateral loads, and we had to get a variance to do that. But the effect of, again, doing that, and if you're able to get the variance, the fact that actually making a core wall out of CLT is so much faster than, let's say, a fully grouted CMU wall, a poured in place concrete wall, which takes weeks and months for the formwork and the curing of grouting all of those CMU units. All of that takes a lot of time, and a CLT core wall will go up in like a matter of a couple of days, right? And so we've actually seen like contractors who've taken this on and actually are just specializing in cores using CLT. So that's like another way. So we're seeing different people use different elements of a mass timber for expediency and where it makes a lot of construction sense. And I think that proliferation of mass timber along those lines, whether it's the cores, whether it's the floors, start to kind of get a greater use, instead of like a owner or a client having to invest fully in it. And I think that, along with the whole buildings that are predominantly mass timber, I think all of that will help familiarize and expand mass timber throughout our country. And it's certainly starting to do that really exponentially year over year.